My name is Sharon. I am a current PhD student, and I'm also an alumni of PAU's undergraduate program.
I'm Mona. I'm a current undergraduate in the Psychology and Social Action program.
And I'm Greta. I am a recent graduate of the Business Psychology program from last year.
I'm kind of really happy to be here. I'm a big fan of PAU, if that's not obvious, but so for me personally, I actually had just moved to California the year before I started at PAU. And so I kind of came in with I feel like a big giant mess to PAU staff that everybody kind of helped me figure out and clean up and just determine the best course of action for me and the future that I had envisioned for myself. And so I came in actually with like a chemical engineering background. So I had never done any psychology courses yet. And I was just wrapping up like a counseling diploma. And I moved from Toronto, Canada. So it was quite a swap in between the education system. And when I kind of moved here, everybody that I bumped into and everybody that I spoke to, and I'm like, yeah, I'm considering psychology. And everyone's like, you got to go to PAU. They're like the psychology school in the area. And I have a buddy of mine who I had met was in the PhD program, and he's still there. And so he was very fond of just kind of the structure and the support that he got as a student. And he was an incoming student to the PhD program. And so he felt like, you know what, Mona, you got to call these guys, you got to see what's up and just see if you can kind of like make that your kind of school of choice. If you've ever gone through like a career shift, it's not very easy. You're usually missing a lot of credits. You're usually just a little all over the place, not really familiar with the structure of psychology classes. And so I believe when I first reached out, I was in touch with like Leonard, Nicholas. I know you and I spoke for a brief period at the start there. And granted, I was missing some credits, and Leonard really walked me through, okay, Mona, what are the colleges in your area? He sat with me through various meetings trying to determine just kind of like, okay, this is the closest college to you. We just want to get you these credits kind of as fast as possible to make sure we can get you started in time. And it's like my problem kind of became like Leonard's like goal to like solve. And I thought that was super supportive. And it really set me up to just kind of realize what I can expect at a university like Palo Alto University. And so he helped me sign up for classes because I had never done it. Like he really went like way above and beyond. So super grateful for Leonard and Nicholas and everybody on the team really. And then he kind of just kept following up like, Mona, how are your credits going? How are your classes going? Considering I wasn't really, if you've done any like biology or chemistry, you're not really doing the academic writing that you'll do in an undergraduate psychology program. So he had advised me to just take like a Psych 101 class because he really wanted me to get an understanding and be prepared walking into this undergraduate, which I thought was really unique because sometimes you kind of navigate community college and people are like, just take what you want and explore what's out there. And if you have something in mind and you kind of don't walk in super set up, I feel like it could get really difficult trying to navigate that. But I also to say that PAU has tons of resources that I've constantly tapped into like myself to kind of support your growth. And I think one of the main parts of that was like our academic mentor. So Dr. Trefalis, who's always kind of been there and made herself available if there was a change in my schedule or something came up for me personally and I needed to make any last minute adjustments to my curriculum or like my career plan. I don't really know what they're called. My little schedule that tells me when I'm going to graduate and what classes I've taken and whatnot. And what I really liked was just the flexibility, I would say, with PAU. I think COVID made everything really, really difficult for a lot of people. And I never felt like I was beyond kind of like having to be online because I originally did want to study in person. I didn't really feel like a deficit in my education. I felt like professors were always available. I felt like resources were made and I was able to really tap into them. Beyond Dr. Trefalis, there was like a student academic mentor who was last year was Gabe, and this year we have somebody new, but even having that person who was a PhD student, I met with Gabe a few times and it was kind of like, hey, like my goal is to get to graduate school. What are the steps that I need to do to kind of get there? How should I orchestrate this paper? Where can I work on my academic writing? And then I was also introduced kind of through one of my classes. And I would say I really appreciate how, some of the teachers that we get in the undergraduate program, we're also PhD students, because then we're learning firsthand, and that knowledge is kind of like almost recycled to the undergrads, and I'm able to really absorb from people who are either alumni like Sharon. Hopefully one day I get to have a chat with you, as well as just kind of, setting myself up, like, what does the future at PAU look like for me if that's something that I chose to pursue? And so, just kind of knowing, and everyone's always so nice. I know that seems like really hard. If you go some of the other bigger universities, it's really hard to get one-on-one time with your professor, or to get even one-on-one times with your colleagues in breakout rooms. And it's really unfortunate for them, not for me, because we don't really have that issue at PAU. I got to join a research lab, and I've got to hone a lot of my research skills, and I've got a tremendous amount of support from graduate students at PAU. And so I really appreciate just the culture of support and growth that was provided. Considering this wasn't really the first time I was going to like a post-secondary or like a post-high school kind of experience, I don't know if anybody's ever had to like wake up at 7 a.m. to register for classes. And if you don't do it on time, you've missed your class, and all this like schedule conflict, and oops, can't take the class you want. So I think in my early conversations with Leonard, one of the things he told me was, Mona, there's no stress. Just don't stress. You're going to get into the class. We're going to make sure it happens. There's going to be space for you. And I really, really appreciated that. I didn't really want to feel like, oh my God, I missed out on like a really great, I don't know, gender studies class or whatever really kind of works for you. Yeah, so I think overall, I really just kind of appreciated that kind of aspect of going to school. I feel like transitions into undergrad from community college, if that's where you're coming from, or high school, are already stressful as is, and there's just so much to always keep track of. And I feel like, 5 minutes later, you're competing with 800 other students to get into this one class. And so I never really had that added stress to that. I like the intimate class sizes. I feel like, again, I'm always really given the opportunity to ask all of my questions. I've never felt like, oh, I don't really understand this assignment, or I don't really know who to turn to in this case. The resources are kind of like, there's an abundance of them, and they're really revisited in class. So a lot of my professors are always like, you know what, Mona, have you considered, sitting with your academic mentor to review that? Or they'll carve out time, even if it's out of office hours, to really meet with me. And so I really appreciated that. I have to say, I think that of all the schools I've been to, PAU has like a very strong interest in student development, success, and progress. It's not just, okay, great, we have, X percentage of undergraduate, graduates or people who graduate from our program. It's also like, where are you trying to get to, and how do we kind of walk the walk with you? And I feel like that's always really, really, really important in undergrad, like the decisions on the classes you choose to take right now, and if grad school is for you, or kind of anything else beyond that. I felt like there was always somebody to say, Mona, and Dr. Trafalis did this beautifully, because I wanted to take a class from the business psychology program. And she said, tell me what you're expecting out of that class. And I had told her, she's like, you know what, Mona, I think actually this class might be better for you. And how do we work it into your schedule? And I felt like, she was helping me build that career, even like, before I got into graduate school. And I just love her passion and her like investment in my success as a student. And honestly, across the board, Sharon, everybody says that. So I know like she just has an abundance of like love and nurturance and like this growth mindset to her students. That's just, it's over the top phenomenal. Like I'm so honored and lucky to have been her student. And you see a lot of Dr. Trafalis, which I absolutely love. I have to say, I think just the selection of professors, I love the diversity and the importance of inclusion at the university. That's really big for me. I'm a visual minority, and I want to know that, my voice is heard, not kind of like put down or suppressed into some, corner, or this is not a space for you. I love the kind of the dynamic that professors foster. I even had a professor who I would show up to his office hours and just be like, can you teach me this? And it was so off curriculum. Like it wasn't even what we were learning. And he's like, yeah, Mona, let's do this in office hours. And so carving out that time again, and just the investment in growth, I'm a very big fan of. If I haven't said that enough. I loved our cultural like psychology class. Again, just coming from, my background, I thought that it was a place that we were all just really welcome to be, ourselves, and that was always welcome at PAU. Like, just, we want to hear from you, and just kind of like welcome intersectionality. And I love that discussion, and I hope that all the other students kind of feel that inclusion as well. And I think the professors do a phenomenal job. And then I have to say that, like, what's really interesting is PAU's kind of always auditing themselves, which I like. It's not like, okay, we have this structure and it's worked and that's what we're going to stick with. They're really adamant about, like, please, like, tell us what's good, but also tell us how we can improve. There's always surveys coming out, like, do you feel heard? I think there was like a survey that came out for just older students. Like, if you were somebody attending undergraduate as an older student, how was like the feel of being an older student? Did you ever feel like that was something that maybe you were being like pinpointed for? And that's, you'll see kind of across the board varying ages at PAU, which I'm an older undergraduate student. I wouldn't say I'm like I'm definitely not fresh out of high school. And so I think that's also really important, having a culture where you don't feel like, oh my God, I'm being scrutinized, or like I'm too old to be here. Just the diversity in age, both in your professors and in your fellow colleagues, and kind of just staff in general. I felt really made me feel like this is a place that I can come and grow and learn, and not worry about judgment, and not worry about, I don't know, whether or not, like, I can focus my mind on my education and not on all these other stressors that might come up being at possibly other institutions. I also love the selection of classes. So I feel like, considering I had like a very limited understanding of psychology before starting, I felt like all of these like hand-picked courses that come together to make up your curriculum are really there, and they set you up so beautifully for futures in psychology and futures in like behavioral sciences, if that's what you choose, or medicine. I know that we have like these special topic classes, and they were very complementary to one another. So last quarter, I got to do a special addictives. It was like a special topics, and it was on addictive behaviors. And then this year, I'm doing kind of the complementary class to that is just addiction counseling. And I know there are surveys that came out, like, did you enjoy the special topics? And I thought having a class that was kind of centered on one, not a modality, but one topic of counseling, because that's the future I hold. Like, I would love to go into therapy, and I do a lot of addiction research just personally with my other research lab. And so I felt like there was, I'm not walking out of my undergraduate feeling like, oh, I didn't get to study gender studies, or I didn't get, an exposure to abnormal psychology. I felt like all the classes, and even the way the classes were set up, and that's the other thing, you don't really have to worry about building your schedule. Like, Dr. Trafalis and the team do that for you. So you're kind of just like, she'll sit with you, you go over it, you're like, yeah. And it looks great. And then you just kind of know, okay, in September I start. It's a clean start. It's nice and fresh. And there's not this added like element of, oh my God, I haven't met my professors, or oh my God, I haven't met this. It's just such an open, I'm a very big fan of communication. And I think PAU does that phenomenally and like flawlessly, because there's always somebody to listen, always somebody willing to hop on a Zoom call with you and hear you out. And I always appreciate that. And again, just, I think the emphasis of like COVID-19 and the stress that came with that, I didn't feel, whereas in my other lab, there's a lot of undergraduates, and a lot of people felt like their universities weren't adequately addressing their mental health needs or struggles that they faced during the pandemic. And I felt like, all of our teachers always pushed us to tap into the resources. If it was mental health resources that we needed, we were told who we can talk to and how to kind of like access those resources that PAU provided. And then beyond that, just academically, I think things will always come up. And the understanding that came from the professors and your colleagues and just school personnel, I think I'm over my time, but I could talk about PAU for hours. So I'll kind of pause there. I'd love to take any questions if anything comes up, but yeah, all in all, a very extremely positive experience on my end. Definitely a school I recommend from A to Z to anybody, even international students. Friends I know from Canada who want to study psychology, I'm like, you got to study at PAU. If it's an option for you and you can move to the US, you got to study at PAU. So yeah, that's my experience.
Thank you so much, Mona. And don't worry about the time. We'll have more time at the end at the Q&A. So I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to keep chatting and for people to ask any questions. But yeah, thanks again for sharing. And Greta, can you tell us a little bit about your experience at PAU and your time in our BP program?
Absolutely. One of my classmates is here as well, though, too, as it turns out. So we just finished last August the business psychology program, which was a hybrid, both online and in person, or it started that way until we had the COVID shift and everything had to, the world shut down and we all had to change. Luckily, none of our academics were interrupted. It was a pretty easy switch since we were already set up for online learning. But kind of my backstory as to how I ended up here. So I got into working retail management fairly quickly out of high school and got just sucked in, and it ended up taking me a good decade to complete all my transfer credits because availability with retail requirements. Basically, I couldn't keep my job if I had a boss who enforced the rule that I had to be available for every single shift. So there were a lot of quarters and semesters that I ended up having to take off to be able to financially support myself. So once I got all my transfer credits taken care of, that was a concern for me in looking for how I was going to finish my 2 years for my bachelor's, was to make sure that I was going to be able to actually complete it in the 2 years that it's supposed to take. So when I came across PAU, initially it was that the business psychology program could be online exclusively, which was going to work better for my needs. As time progressed, I got accepted. Interview process, application process was super smooth and easy. I was actually kind of blown away because even community college, trying to figure out what classes you need to take is like a giant nightmare, as we've all experienced. So I think about a month after we had, done the acceptance thing, and sure, you start in a couple months, I found out that we were going to do the hybrid course, and I was kind of panicked, and had a couple conversations with some of the administrative folks, and they assured me that it was only going to be a 1 night a week class. So in person, so 2 classes online, 1 in person. So it was doable. I could make that work with my retail situation. It's not ideal, but at the time it worked out for me. And it turned out that it was a lot more fun that way. So we started off with our in-person class, and we all got to get to know each other, and our cohort actually stayed together throughout the entirety of the 2 years. So we all took the classes 2 years straight together up until the last 2 quarters. So we ended up creating a really good, good little relationship throughout the group. And we also had a lot of repeat professors. So we had, the same professors multiple times. I think that we had Professor Novacell, or at least I did, all but maybe 2 quarters. I had him for a class. So we had a really, there were familiar faces everywhere we went. So there was always somebody we knew we could turn to. We'd already established a relationship, a baseline of trust, credibility together, group projects, working together, all of that. So starting out in person and having that, PAU was right that was actually a really, really good resource and benefit to us long term. So I'm glad it worked out that way. And it really was just 1 night a week, and it was fairly easy to manage. Another big concern with anyone who works full-time and is trying to go to school full-time is the course load. And as it turned out, it was manageable. We had a couple courses that were a little rough, a little heavy, but I was impressed that we were able to communicate with our professors pretty well, that they would accommodate needs, give us a little extra time on a particularly heavy workload week if we needed. And often having that really close-knit cohort of all of us, talking to each other outside of class, we could come together as if 6 of 8 of us are struggling to get this done, maybe it's just a little too much. So I think there were actually 9 of us. Sorry for misspeaking, but it was a really good experience knowing that we could, without fear of being told that we just weren't working hard enough, we could express that if we were running into anything difficult. We really did have the support in not only each other, not only the professors, but there were a few times that we reached out to PAU administration regarding some concerns that were taken care of and addressed. So that always was really helpful. Let's see, what else can I mention? Oh, one of the one of the big things that I really appreciated was I ended up breaking my wrist, and breaking it enough that I had to have a surgical repair rather than just a cast. So I was in a position where, and it was my dominant hand, so I couldn't write, I couldn't type, couldn't use a mouse for a good month with recovery from my surgery. And I was lucky enough that I was able to, do a Zoom meeting with each professor, and kind of, we found ways around it. So I could, they gave me a little extra time to acclimate to using dictation software. Not that it's difficult, but if you don't use it and you don't understand the nuances, editing and going back and forth can be a little tough. So I don't know that somebody who ends up with an injury like that and can't keep up with coursework at a regular university is really going to have the option to work it out with their professors to really try to, okay, what can we do? Can we have you do this paper and just say it to me rather than writing it out? Can we just talk about it? Can we have a conversation rather than having to type out a 10-page paper when you can't type? So it was, overall, and I think Mona spoke to this too, the support throughout is a really big deal, and it makes it a very positive experience throughout. Even when something goes wrong, it's easy to, speak your mind on the subject and work to find a solution that accommodates everybody. Overall, I think that's about it. Oh, and I did get out of retail after all that, because that was the goal of finishing my degree, is that I got out of retail because of this experience. So that's my time at PAU.
Thank you so much, Greta, for sharing. I was listening to your experience talking about the hybrid transition, right? Like doing it 100% online or doing the hybrid option. And I like what Mona mentioned about how PAU is self-auditing, right? Or we're listening to students or doing surveys, because something that we were talking about when we started this recruitment cycle for the business psychology program, we were just having discussions in the office about what delivery should we offer? What are the students interested in? So there was this air of general concern and just wanting to know what the students prefer, what's a better method for them. And a lot of the students that we were hearing back from were saying they would like to have the 100% online option back. We had students from out of state, all over the US, wanting to talk about the BP degree, but not necessarily wanting to move to the Bay Area, which is a huge commitment. So, and like you mentioned, and what about your work obligations, right? And how can you juggle that schedule? So we got that feedback, and they decided to do the 100% online option again for next year for the BP program. So, I'm glad the hybrid option worked out for you, but just kind of saying that, we're never static, right? We're willing to change, or we're willing to see that if we do something and it's not necessarily what the students are looking for anymore, that we can pivot and we can offer something different. But thank you so much for sharing. And Shirin, I'll let you go ahead and share your story. Let us know about your time in not just the undergrad program, but now our doctoral program.
Yeah, so hi everyone, and hello to anyone who's watching on YouTube. So my name is Shirin. I'm currently a second-year student in PAU's PhD program. I'm on the pediatric behavioral health track. I'm also in Dr. Bungay's children and adolescent psychotherapy and technology lab. I'm in the early stages of my dissertation, and I just finalized my topic. So I'll be creating a chatbot to teach teens with autism how to have conversations. I'm also an alumni of PAU's undergraduate program, and I graduated with my Bachelor of Science in Psychology and Social Action. So I'm here, like the others, to really echo their sentiments and to talk about my experience in the undergraduate program, the opportunities that it brought me, and to really highlight why the program is so great. To start, what I love about PAU is that you can be as involved as you want to be. And I was very involved within the program in undergrad. I still am now as a PhD student. PAU is a great place to network. I've gotten so many opportunities through attending events, getting to know people, talking to staff, faculty, and PAU really cultivates an environment where that's possible for you. To start with how I ended up at PAU, I've always had a passion for psychology and especially for working with children and adolescents. I worked with teens and young adults with autism for 4 years, where I worked for and then directed a summer program that focused on teaching independent living skills. I learned about PAU and actually moved up here to finish community college with the idea of transferring into their undergraduate program. So I absolutely loved the idea of being in a school full of people who are like-minded, in that it all falls under the scope of psychology. But everyone also has various interests within the field, and it just sparks such interesting conversations. I really didn't like taking psychology classes in community college because people in the classes were from different majors and were taking the class as an elective or because they had to. But at PAU, you're really able to have so many conversations within the realm of psychology and learn about things in the field that might spark your interest that you didn't know about before, or that you didn't think you would like. When I went through the undergraduate program, we were in a cohort system and went through a lot of the same classes with the same people. You really have an opportunity to not only form study groups and go through the program together, do homework together, but you have an opportunity to connect with one another and to really get to know each other better. And I always talk about how I met one of my best friends, Tina, in the program, and I've now formed a lifelong friendship with her. And that was really through going through the program together. I want to talk a little more about involvement in the school, and I know a few other people touched on this. During undergrad, I was president of student council. I helped propose a dean's list. Me and other student council members suggested changes, a lot of which are now part of the program that you will all hopefully be attending. So there's really room to facilitate change and to be involved, to provide feedback, to really help fine tune whatever it is that you're looking for. And also to echo, the staff and faculty are so supportive and helpful. I met with so many professors to talk about my career goals, to get advice, and they really make themselves available to you. I also really want to talk about student organizations. I was part of student organizations. I'm currently the co-president of a student organization that I helped start for MENA students at PAU. I'm also vice president of Psy-Chi, which is the Psychology Honor Society. So we have so many incredible organizations that you can be a part of that not only provide network opportunities, but honestly, chances to attend some really fabulous events. They're so fun. They have game nights, arts and crafts, so much more professional events, guest speakers. And if you see something lacking, there's really room to create your own organization, which is what I did. And this all goes into that involvement piece. You can really customize your experience here. Another key point that I always talk about, because I swear it is what really differentiates us from other schools, is the internship that you do during your senior year. And this was my favorite part about the program. It really provides you with an opportunity to gain real world experience and to try something new. So if you're interested in going on to graduate school, this is important because it can help you expand your CV. What I love about PAU is that there's an opportunity for undergraduate students to volunteer in research labs, and you can learn so much about the world of research and maybe even work on projects within the lab. It's a really great opportunity to network with other undergraduate students, master's students, PhD, PsyD students. When I was in undergrad, I had an opportunity to even participate in other students' research. So I got an authorship on a poster for collecting data for a doctoral student during my junior years in undergrad. I also volunteered in Dr. Bungay's research lab and then ended up completing my senior internship there. And through that, I had the opportunity to work on so many projects. I got my first authorship on a paper through that internship. I had the opportunity to help write book chapters, help create presentations for Concept, which is PAU's platform for continued education. And I loved his lab so much that I went on to apply and got accepted into his lab during my first year in the PhD program. So I'm now completing my dissertation there and working on projects related to chatbots and mental health. And by the way, that's something that I did not know that I liked until I started networking and volunteering in the lab. And now I have a passion for it. So that was really fun to kind of go through and really find something that I'm so interested in that I'm now doing a dissertation on it. Other things I love about the undergraduate program, we had so many workshops that helped with professional development. We had a CV workshop, career planning, financial planning, so many opportunities to help you grow both professionally and personally. So that was absolutely amazing, helped me so much with my future wanting to go into a graduate program. There were also many social events that I attended, whether they were part of student organizations or PAU in general. I know that before COVID, Dr. O'Connor, who's the president of our school, had a brunch that I attended. And through that, I actually networked and found a job opportunity and got to mentor a teen with autism for a while. So these events really provide you with opportunities to get to know staff, faculty, and to network with people. I know I keep talking about networking, but I think that's really important when you're thinking about what school to attend, because you need to go to a school where you can network and find opportunities to help you grow professionally and personally. I also want to talk to those of you who are interested in going on to graduate school after your undergraduate degree. I always like to say that I loved PAU so much that I decided to stick around and get my PhD here. It's like my famous quote. I went into the undergraduate program knowing that I wanted to go on to a doctoral program. And I've always been interested in not only clinical work, but also academia. I was not as research oriented at first, but I found a passion for it while I was in the undergraduate program and volunteering in Dr. Bunge's lab. And through connections I made in the undergraduate program, I'm now on this panel talking to all of you. The program really provided me with a foundation to go on to graduate school. I felt like the classes I took really prepared me. I always talk about how the psych writing class with Dr. Trefalas really helped to fine tune my writing skills, which has been an absolute lifesaver in graduate school. And lastly, I really want to talk about student jobs at PAU. I think this is a key point I want to make because I know how difficult it can be to work while being in school. And I want to say throughout both the undergraduate program and the doctoral program, I have and am currently working student jobs. What's great is that they understand that you're a student first, and they're very accommodating to that. In undergrad, I was a note taker for classes. I was on student council. As a graduate student, I started working for undergrad admissions. I've now moved on to being a student interviewer for the PhD program. So I'm interviewing prospective students. I've been a TA. I've been asked to come back and guest lecture in the undergraduate program, and I've done that twice now. So not only are there job opportunities that help you out financially, but they've also helped me grow my CV and have helped me to grow as a professional and gain new experiences. So overall, absolutely loved the program. I think I'm over time too, but I genuinely love PAU's undergraduate program and the doctoral program. So I know I've talked a lot, but feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And I know we're going to do a Q&A in a few. So
I actually haven't really applied to the program yet, but I'm planning to apply for this fall. And I think I emailed you earlier, and I will submit my application soon. But I'm kind of I'm kind of struggling under the two undergraduate programs for the psychology and social actions and business psychology program. And maybe you guys can give me some advice on it.
That's great. Well, I think there's so many qualified people in this Zoom meeting to answer that question, then I'm just going to mute myself and let them talk because I think we have current and past students in both programs.
Yeah, and sorry, do you mind if I ask Shireen, what's your what program did you attend again?
I was in the psychology and social action program for undergrad.
Thank you. Because
Yeah.
I'm interested in what you talk about helping out children and stuff. And I was actually thinking about this program too.
Yeah, I think that if you really think about what your career goals are, business psychology has more to do with the business aspect of things, organizational psychology, that aspect that maybe Greta can speak more to. I think psychology and social action really talks about the foundations of psychology, the theories of personality, counseling. If you're interested in doing therapy with children and adolescents, for example, it's a really great program to be able to explore your interests. I did all of my projects on children. I did it with children with autism, Down syndrome. I focused on depression, anxiety. I really explored different aspects of childhood disorders. So that's definitely a great part of the psychology and social action program, especially if you're thinking about going into, being a therapist or a psychologist in the future.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I definitely have interest in this program if I'm admitted, but because I'm not really familiar with the business side, so I'm afraid I might get regret when I choose the wrong program, but I think I'm into the social actions more. Thank you.
I'll just quickly jump in here too, that there is an overlap in some of the classes that you'll do. Like I've taken classes with students from the business and psychology program, and I'm in like social action. But Sharon, love your emphasis on kind of what's your career goal, because I think that's going to really set you up to decide. They're two distinct programs, so there is overlap, but they're still both kind of going to lead you differently. Like I'm very like if I ever do another PhD, if I get in and I do clinical, it's going to be social psychology, because I'm very big on community and psychoeducation and implementing like social change and just how that impacts the way that we live every day. And the social action program is so beautiful for that. I felt like I was really equipped to understand like the society I live in, the society I'm a part of, and kind of what my role is. And so if you find like you're geared more towards like, I'm going to, maybe run a nonprofit one day, you might want to go the business track, because I think it sets you up. That organizational psychology is going to be really important. And definitely, Greta, you can speak on that way more than I can. But just from my end, having been, or having not having been, I am a community oriented and like super heavily involved in like social action. It was like a no-brainer for me. I'm like, oh, social action, that's the one. Like I didn't even unfortunately consider the business one. But there is still an overlap of some of the classes, so don't feel like you're going to totally miss out. And then working with like your academic mentor and just seeing what can also work between the two programs is such a bonus. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you.
So, and speaking to the piece of like the business side of it, the nice part about this you get the basics of business, your marketing, your human resources, those types of things, but the psychology addition to that, rather than a bunch more accounting classes, we still had to take those. They were rough, but you get a lot of really good insight into how to work with others as well as manage others, but from all different walks of life. So whether that be from somebody who has some sort of behavioral difference, such as like somebody with ADHD, how do you learn to work with that person more effectively based on their needs, not just our own. So that piece of the psychology aspect is super beneficial to somebody who's going into any type of a business role, because anything you do in life, any career you choose is going to deal with people. So you can't really go wrong with either program. It just kind of depends, again, going back to what Sharon and Mona both said, it depends on what your career goals are and what you want to do moving forward.
Greta, you're killing me because I co-founded a nonprofit and I'm like, maybe I should have done the business track, but you know what? Maybe if I'll go back and I'll take some of the courses, but that's great. I don't know if we made it any easier for you to decide between programs because they both seem like they're pretty fantastic.
And what I did is in the chat here, we have this link that kind of compares side by side the business psychology and the psychology and social action program. But then I also put 2 links for the curriculum. So you can see specific classes in the BP program, specific classes in the psychology and social action program. Because I really like what's been echoed around the meaning here about kind of going depending on what you want to do as far as your career goals, right? And helping that steer you. But also I think it doesn't hurt to take a look at the curriculum, see if any of the classes interest you, if you might be passionate about some of those things that each program covers. And for those of you watching on YouTube, what I'm going to do is I'm going to link the comparison between the degrees, the curriculum. I'm going to put that in the description as well so that you guys can take a look at it. But great question.